if you got 100 math geeks from the University of Chicago that studied sports betting and mathematics and science and asked all 100, should you go for a field goal or a touchdown when you have 4th and goal from the 1, none of them would say, well, it depends upon the matchups. It depends upon do you have line dominance? They'd all say, oh, you go for it. It's like a blackjack hand. If you have an ace-6, you never stand on ace-6. There can't be any debate mathematically.
This is Sharp Money with Patrick Meagher on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Let's just say hi. How you feeling, Steve?
I am good, Patrick. What is going on? You ready for the draft? You excited?
I am. I actually had a call, as I mentioned. My sister knows nothing about football, but of course she's in Michigan. And she said, oh, everybody's excited here because the draft this year in Detroit. The draft itself, are you heavily involved betting-wise?
No. This has been one of the worst drafts imaginable for a variety of reasons that I could lay out if you would like me to.
Sure.
This happened with Super Bowl props. There are so many people that are so good now that are coming on, Established the Run and various other guys that are just specializing in the draft, that it is the valuations on all these players are rising and falling, but they happen so quickly that it's not the candy store that it once was where, sleep until noon, go ahead and, get lunch, check it out, go to a book. Still go ahead and get Jaden Daniels minus 150. It's a different world, Patrick.
It certainly is. Do you have empathy for the bookmakers? It's funny. Derek Stevens came by last week and said to Dustin, he said, the draft used to be one of my favorite events of the year, and now it's my most hated as a bookmaker. He can't stand booking the draft.
I don't, because, the bookmakers have a license to steal. Think about this. The average person, I'm looking at the holds throughout in the different states, and pretty much the average sports book is holding 9%. So think about that. So the average drunk hippopotamus that hasn't done this research yet, that's going and betting minus 110, loses at 4.54%. But the average adult loses at 9%, a rate twice that of the drunk hippo, which is staggering. And it shows you've got all these people coming up just donating their money, making horrendous bets. You just have to be sharp enough that you don't get depantsed by the pros on stuff. Well, guess what? Places like the South Point did get depantsed because they had no idea what they were doing. And Derek and his folks, they're spot on. They're nailed it. Deal $500 limits. Don't deal 100 different props on the number 18 running back. Is he going to go, number 184? Limit what you're offering. Offer the key guys and offer nickel limits and move aggressively.
Well, Steve, how difficult is it for someone like you who likes to attack rogue numbers? So one thing you do when it's football season in season, you bet the opening lines, right? You say that's off, I want to bet it. A lot of times in a lot of markets, specifically out here in Vegas, they're not putting up the full menu right away. It's a very slow burn on what you can actually bet, so hard to get down early.
Sure, and frankly, I'm not good enough with the draft for it to matter because I need to see the market start to mature. I don't originate in the draft.
Yeah.
If you give, as an example, this NFL season wins, when those numbers pop up and they first come up, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 7.5 at one place and they're 8 at another place, I just know that's a bad number. I'm playing over, and I'll do all my research later, but I know enough to, within a half game, pretty much what every team should be. But and there are guys in the draft, I'm sure that's the case, but I'm not one of them, and they went ahead and took advantage because of that.
Drunk hippopotamus. That's what you get from Steve Fezzik. I loved it. That was classic. You mentioned last week on the show, you're like, I don't even know the numbers. I'll probably just blanket these unders in the first round. They went 6-2 over the weekend. Did you go with unders in game one?
I did, selectively. I wish I'd just done it, blanketed it across the board. And let's be honest, this was the easiest 6-2 ever. It could have been better. We've had the few overs we've had have been just barely over, whereas we've had dead, not unders. Now, it's true, we could have had overtime or double overtime, which is where unders go to die. But it is clear, eye test-wise, that there has been an officiating change. I know this happened after the All-Star break, that they're calling fewer fouls, but this is magnified in the playoffs. They're letting them play, Patrick. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. I mean, these unders, some of the unders cashing by 30 points. So even if you saw overtime, you weren't necessarily going to get burned there. So agree with that. You did mention the blanket last week. Now, let's talk about the zigzag. We should, for new bettors, just explain what the zigzag theory is, and can you still get it priced well? Let's talk about the zigzag here, Steve.
So for years, the pros love to bet zigzag. Basically, they identify the team in the prior playoff game, ideally that lost and did not cover, so they underperformed, and back that team in the very next game. Now, the word got out on that, and so the market started putting a tax on the loser, not on the winner, but on the loser of game one. And here's the curious thing. That tax is not applying this year. The marketplace, rightly or wrongly, is saying zigzag is dead. Now, the 76ers Knicks, you've got injuries, so Maxey, not being, possibly not even playing for the 76ers. I'm going to throw that game out. But let's look at like Orlando and the Cavs. For the longest time, that game one line was 4.5. Cavs look good. They cover. Well, that means this should be Orlando's game. We should be looking to bet Orlando. And in the past, we'd be getting 4 or 4.5. And now we're getting 5 and even 5.5. So I'd have to endorse Orlando. Similarly, Lakers Nuggets closed at 6.5 in many spots with game one. Now, obviously, Denver looked good, but it wasn't a blowout win. And now the line is up to 7, and you're catching 7. So zigzag, the marketplace is saying, is dead. I'm a firm believer zigzag wasn't working because there was a tax on the teams. When there's no tax, absolutely, I will be looking to invest in Orlando and to a lesser extent in the Lakers.
In Philadelphia, Jonathan Von Tobel was just on. He actually liked them. He got them at 6. I see a shop showing 5, most shops showing 5.5. But as you mentioned, it's so up in the air. Maxey's questionable. I'm sure he'll play. Embiid questionable. I'm sure he'll play. But what are you going to get from Embiid is the question here, Steve.
What's the movie? Is it with Samuel Jackson where he's so fragile every bone breaks? Is it Unbreakable?
Snakes on a plane?
It's a good movie. But the
Unbreakable.
Unbreakable. Well, and Embiid should have starred in it because that dude is the greatest basketball player I have ever seen. But he's made of plexiglass. He is just like, it's like me out on the tennis court. If I'm playing tennis against Gil and I'm ahead, Gil knows put up a lob, make me jump up. He's got at least a 3% chance I'm going to have to withdraw.
Steve, are you okay? That movie reference is only 24 years old. Normally, you're way before that time.
I hear you.
He generally goes old. And it's funny, too, because if you think about the Heat and Celtics yesterday, Steve, fascinating, because what it closed, 14, and the Celtics could have won by 40. And I'm not being sarcastic. They could have won by 40. They got bored late in the third into the fourth, and then the Heat go on a heater to win. Now, the Celtics win by 20, but all of a sudden that 14 was in question when they're up like 30. So the swings are wild.
Live wagers love swings like that. And a good point, when a team gets down by double the point spread, all right? So as soon as a 14-point dog gets down 28, like the Heat did, it's probably time to back them. And then, was there any question? I know I'm pass posting, $80 fine, double pass post. Once the lead got cut to 14 with like 3.5 minutes to play, it's like the Heat aren't going to score anymore. The Celtics are going to go ahead and put this thing away at that point in time. So I have to tell you, I love the NBA playoffs because during the regular season, just a couple places maybe are dealing these live lines. Now we've got Circa dealing it. We've got Westgate dealing it. I'll say this, Patrick. It is becoming harder and harder to make money at this. So even Circa during their live lines, remember, there's only one game going on. And I've talked to Jeff Benson, and he's like, you're an old guy. Get off my lawn, Steve. Come on. He's like, I got a deal minus 112 VIG. And if you complain too much, I'm going to deal minus 115 VIG on these live lines. And I'm like, there's only one game going on, Jeff. Come on. You got to be able to deal minus 110.
We used to do it, Dustin and I, when we were watching the games on the old radio show, where we'd wait for the Warriors in their prime to get down and then just jump on them in game. I don't know this answer. I should know it. But do you guys know what the money line, the pricing was when the Lakers were up 12 early against the Nuggets? Do either of you know that? Because I don't.
I was actually at dinner. I apologize. And so my friends are like, you're supposed to be the hardest working guy in sports betting, maybe during football season. But at some point, you got to take a little time out. So I do not know. But
it is something where, even if you can get it even money when they're down 12, do you wait sometimes for some of these dominant teams to be down and then just jump in regardless?
Yes, so I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit. I far prefer betting a team that's a prohibitive favorite, -2, to go ahead and cover a -2 than to cover a pick 'em. Why is that? Because all they got to do is get tied. If they get to overtime, I feel like I'm going to get there. And it's a lot easier if you're projected to be tied to pull it out late than when you're catching 2, you're usually down like 12, like in the second half, and oftentimes it's past the point of no return where everything really has to start going right for you to get the W.
I just thought of something. We are having a lot of action through sharpmoney at VSiN.com. It's not often you get somebody with a wealth of knowledge like Steve. You can email in your questions for Steve's segment. If you want to ask a professional bettor who has more knowledge just about betting than anyone, feel free to hit us up, sharpmoney at VSiN.com, and your questions for Steve Fezzik will get answered on the program. So email the big guy, sharpmoney at VSiN. You can ask anything. He's good on the fly. Nothing catches him off guard. You ask and you shall receive. We just asked a couple of minutes ago. If you have any questions for a professional bettor and one of the best to do it, Steve Fezzik, you can email us, sharpmoney at VSiN.com, and we already have a submission. Keep them coming, and they can be for today, next week, and weeks to come. Fezzik's the best, pregame.com, at Fezzik Sports on Twitter. Big guy, we do have a question.
Got a couple coming in here. So the first one, Steve, what is your best handicapping book recommendation? Currently reading the book The Odds that was mentioned on the show and is going to need a new book ASAP.
It's a great question because I don't really have a good book I could recommend as a handicapping book. I've got many sports betting books, which is much more how to bet as a sharp than to actually handicap. So some of those books would include, in no order, Stanford Wong, Sharp Sports Betting, and the one chapter when he lays out how to win playing teasers, that's worth the price of the book alone. Koenig, The Sharp Money, is a fantastic book.
You suggested
so
that.
Good.
I have to tell you.
So good.
I listened to that book, and I was actually upset when it was over. I didn't want the story to end. It should be a movie.
Yeah. When Dustin and I started working together and he started getting into sports betting, Steve, I told him to download that on Audible, and he became obsessed. It's obviously loosely it's about Billy Walters, but there are anonymous names. We also, Steve and I love the Millman book as well. What was that called?
The Odds by Chad
Millman.
That's
the one that he's reading. Okay,
documenting,
gotcha.
that kind of, it goes to show Alan Boston once famously, this is before apps, and he brought up an example like one time, I don't know, Holy Cross is like playing Duke, and they're catching 28.5 at the MGM Grand, and they're taking 3 dimes. Richie Bocciolari, whose nickname in the Sharp Money is the Pencil, by the way, the Pencil. So Alan hops in his Corvette, and he's like, traffic not good, got 28 minutes to get down there. And he's like, why isn't every single person in the Valley driving to the MGM Grand to get down on this bet? It's so good, plus 28.5. One more for you, King Yao, and I don't have the title of it, Y-A''O. King Yao wrote an excellent book on the math of sports betting as well.
We literally just asked minutes ago, but Steve is very popular. He's a lightning rod.
Weighing the odds. Fantastic.
Laying the odds. It's great. Steve's a lightning rod. What we like about Steve, and more people should be like this, he's not afraid to speak his mind, and he's not afraid to get on a public forum like Twitter and give out information and debate. So if you have questions from a professional bettor, they're coming in. We've got a couple more here. Big guy, go ahead.
Next one here. So you're a little bit over my head. I'm a little bit dumb with math. I'm not quite as smart as Steve. Does a bettor have an edge if they're recovering 20% cash back on their losses?
Oh, my goodness, yes. So, good. Gosh. There's a
Such a good question. I didn't understand it, but Steve knew right away.
There's a blackjack author, and he used to be he used to work for the Postal Service, and then he wound up playing blackjack for a living, and he lived off of rebates. So he actually, I will have to come back with what the name of the book is because I don't recall it. But like obviously, if you get a 20% rebate, well, that's easy. I'll bet 11,000 to make 10,000 on the Magic plus 5.5 tonight. So think about this. If I lose 11,000, but I multiply by 80%. So I only lose, 9,200? And if I win 10,000. So it's like I'm the bookie now. Most places won't let you play just that way. But those rebates can be really, really valuable.
Dustin, could you read the question again?
Yeah. It was, does a bettor have an edge if they're recovering 20% cash back on their losses?
And a bigger edge if it's a weekly thing, Patrick. So if every week I get a 20% rebate. Now, there's a thing called makeup. Like, let's say I'm up 10,000. My bookie might say, okay, Steve, well, I can't give you this 20% of losses until you've lost back the 10,000. Well, then this becomes a very short-term thing. But there are indeed situations where there are some bookmakers that will give you a 10% on each and every week. And by the way, it's always a good idea to cry a river, just in general. When you lose big, I don't care if you're only at craps table for like 15 minutes. You lose like $1,500. You go to the casino card and says, oh, you got $3.12 in comps. Screw that. You head into your host and you say, look, I got destroyed. You need to buy me dinner. And if you're firm and you ask him to be fair and you give him a gift card, more often than not, he will.
They can afford it.
Yes.
You could tell Steve liked that question because he lit up when he read it.
He loves it.
We'll get to the next one. This is also something about Steve. Like, he could be having a great year, having a bad year. Steve's always going to find a deal when it comes to saving $1 on food. He used to go to the South Point at that. Remember the restaurant he used to go to? He said, this is what the steak and eggs cost this year.
Midnight.
Steve, you're always ahead of the curve when it comes to saving $1.
I'm worried I'm getting Alzheimer's. I can't remember the name. So the name of the author is Arnold Snyder, and the name of the book is called Radical Blackjack. And it has the concepts about rebates and blackjack, but it absolutely applies to sports and the like. And this guy is so smart, he actually ran the simulator that like he only would get a rebate if he was down 100,000. He's like, if I'm down 85,000, I got to break out the max bets, because I got to get into rebate territory.
By the way, don't I let the autofill search. So DraftKings, if you're monitoring my computer use on this work laptop, don't accidentally write radical blackjacking. Because the video that come up, not good.
I understand. We do have another question. Again, you can submit your question for Steve Fezzik. And we don't have to preview the questions. He can answer it on the fly. You can go sharpmoney at VSiN.com for questions. Go ahead, Dustin.
All right, next one. This is NFL specific, so right up your alley. Steve, how do you think the Steelers will do next year, and what do you think of Mike Tomlin as a bettor?
As a bettor, I have no idea. I don't know.
No. I think he's saying as a bettor, betting on or fading.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
He's a great coach. Obviously, he has no idea what he's doing with game theory. Like the best evidence I can give is so Mike Tomlin consistently would kick a field goal, 4th and goal from the 1. To simplify it, even if it was the end of the half and you make it half the time, it's worth 3.5 points to go for it, and it's worth 3 points to kick the field goal. Now, obviously, it's worth even more because if it's not the end of the half, you're sticking your opponent on the 1-yard line. I know Lombardi disagrees, but he's just wrong. You always go for, on 4th and goal from the 1, you should always go for it unless it's the final minute of the game. But he would go for 2. So he would go for 2 from the 2 when the math didn't support it, and it was like, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another, but he'd kick the field goal. Drives me crazy. But really good coach, really good motivator of the players, and as I mentioned before, I did bet Pittsburgh over 7.5 and over 8 season wins already.
I love it. Yes. And Steve, we might have run into something here. We're going to have a ton of questions for you next week from the listeners as well.
And to be fair, like when I say like I disagree with someone and I'm right, and I know this comes across wrong. If you got 100 math geeks from the University of Chicago that studied sports betting and mathematics and science and asked all 100, should you go for a field goal or a touchdown when you have 4th and goal from the 1? None of them would say, well, it depends upon the matchups. It depends upon do you have line dominance? It depends upon if you have the right play. They'd all say, oh, you go for it. It's just, even if you have a crappy line and a terrible offense against like the 86 Bears, you still go for it. It's that dominant. It's that clear cut. It's like a blackjack hand. If you have an ace-6, you never stand on ace-6. There can't be any debate mathematically. You got to either double or hit.
Well, the way your brain works is you remove emotion. Another example of that would be people talk about going through cold streaks and say take a couple of days off. You don't believe in that theory because you believe an edge is an edge and an advantage is an advantage. You just keep firing.
Yeah, I watched Unabated with Captain Jack Andrews, who does a great job, and they talk about if you're going through a bad patch, take a day off. And I think that's excellent advice for the average gambler who may or may not even have an edge. But for someone that clearly has the edge and has done this and is a professional bettor, there's no reason ever to take a day off. Heck, if you want to take a day off, go play poker against the 2-5 tourists on a Friday night, because that's not gambling. That's just making some money and having fun. Yes.
Temperament is important. I have a genuine question for you. Have you ever really gotten mad? You seem to have such a personality that you kind of can compartmentalize. Do you ever get mad as a person?
Yes, when I work with people who steal from me. That is the one time, and if you talk to like Crackman, Bill Krackomberger, he and I agree, it's just like Billy Walters has happened to numerous times. There is something about our industry that there is just like no honor amongst like the professional sports bettors and poker players. The same thing all the time. You hear Twitter wars where you hear guys that are like super, super successful, and it's like, oh, that guy owes a whole bunch of people a whole lot of money. It's terrible.
And it's almost like the mafia. Like sports betting, honor, that should be the main tenet. Like this is built on honor because we're all in it, before the proliferation of legalization. It's almost like all you have is honor in a racket like this.
And we're not talking about disputes. There's one thing to have disputes. There's another thing to say, hey, I owe you $10,000, but I'm entering a $25,000 tournament and I don't have any money to pay you.
We keep them coming. Sharpmoney@VSiN.com. Questions for Fezzik. We got one more segment next. I don't think people realize we were talking to Brennan White, who runs the book at DraftKings last week, and he was inviting Nuggets action. Now, DraftKings not in Vegas. People don't realize, that's a Lakers town, right, Steve? VGK, you're going to get taxed there. The Lakers are heavily bet, and it's a Lakers town. I'm trying to think of what else. Maybe a little bit of a Dodgers town. Am I correct?
Yes, and what was interesting here is I roundly criticized the fact that they were doing so low on the Nuggets series price. I said this is just a bad number. Denver minus 320 is fantastic, and the best way I put it in context is I was like, even if the Lakers play so far above their heads that their noses bleed for 2 weeks, they're still probably best case scenario go 3-3. So if you bet the Lakers in the series and they go 3-3, you're like, all right, we're styling. We're doing really well. Well, not really, because even if you're down, even if it's 3-3 and Game 7's in Denver, I still think Denver's going to be minus 320 in Game 7. But what was interesting is that, and this is the hard part about sports betting, both of us can claim to be correct, because Game 1 line closed 6.5, and the series line, it went as high in some places minus 380, and then all the money was coming back in on the Lakers, and so it justified that DraftKings number, which was completely a rogue number on the series minus 320, being much more in line with a whole bunch of other books at the closer.
He said the number one betting tip, and I'm just reading verbatim from your notes, number one betting tip, if the entire marketplace is dealing the same number on a game, and it's rarely correct to bet the game at 110 VIG. Could you explain?
Yes, because you want to get help. You want to find a way to get help. Horse players understand this. They get rebates. So if you don't get rebates, you're not going to win betting horses. Don't flood me with all the complaints. I understand there's pick sixes and exotics and other things that are beatable. But in general, good rule of thumb. So here in the NBA playoffs, there's so few games and the market is so hammered into stone. I would say you got to find a way to get, if you're playing the day of the game, to get it reduced VIG. But I have an answer. Good old Lonigan has the answer for you, boys. Icy Calm. It's Icy Calm. That is a movie reference from 1978. See if anyone gets that. Go ahead and let us know. So
he's back.
The Icy Calm Lonigan says, go ahead and lay 105 minus 105, and that is at the Coast Properties. There's one downtown at the Fremont Street, right across the street. Now, they've got a big sign that says FanDuel, but that never happened. They're still Coast, and so they're not even advertising. It's a minus 105 Coast Properties throughout the valley. Patrick, why is anyone betting big anywhere but the Coast on these games, playing the NBA sides the day of the game?
What is, as far as modernity, does Johnny like movies? Do you ever sit down and watch a movie with your son?
Oh gosh, yeah. I have to edit out all the inappropriate stuff. So, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, he thought was tremendous. So obviously, he only got to watch like 2/3 of it. But I live in the movies back. Like we watched Meatballs with Bill Murray. That's a classic. If you've never seen Meatballs, you know what? It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you played all the home teams on the Grand Salami -3, and they were up 10, and then Seattle won by 8, and you lost if you laid minus. It just doesn't matter.
I've never seen Meatballs.
Well,
Tremendous.
I would say if you haven't seen Phoebe Cates coming out of the pool, that was probably some motivation for you back in the day there, Steve.
You know, that movie was so good that the 7th best actor that barely got any screen time was Nicolas Cage. Friends of Spicoli. You have to really squint and look for him. He gets about 5 seconds of airtime.
You often discuss, it's a good conversation piece for a network like this, talking about series prices and the adjustments, but you talk about going game by game. What about a series like this? So a great game, the best game of the weekend was Oklahoma City and New Orleans, the late game last night. The series price is now Oklahoma City laying 1,200 and the Pelicans coming back 7-1. If you did like the Pelicans, would you suggest maybe getting involved at 7-1?
God, no. But so people are like, well, so lay the minus 1,200. I think probably minus 1,100 plus 1,100, no big line would be about right. But I see that as like a minor miracle. Without Zion, how are they going to win that series? It's just not going to happen. They played very well game one. Don't get me wrong, but I just think it's too many things. The planets have to virtually align for them to be able to go ahead and steal 4 games because they're going to. I think they'll be underdogs in every game. I can't see them winning.
Your buddy Will Hill came on. Curious what you think about this, and he said minus 155 on the Celtics to sweep the Heat. Thoughts?
I think it's a good bet. You really just need to win Game 3, right? You're going to win Game 2. And then Game 3, you're going to flip it around. If they're laying 15, you're going to be laying 9, Game 3, and then it's going to go right back to minus 12. So here's where I think the books are getting this wrong. I think it's a very good bet by Will Hill, very sharp guy. By the way, I got to see Will last week, so he was styling with his family, doing the vacation, the Vegas vacation thing. The Game 4 line, the Game 3 line will be minus 9, but the Game 4 line will go back up to minus 12. The old Charles Barkley, pack your golf clubs, let's get ready, right? If you're the Miami Heat, if you're down 0-3, what possible motivation do you have to go back to Boston and get your butt kicked in Game 5?
This is random. Did you read or listen to the Billy Walters book?
I read about 3/4 of it. What's interesting is that, and I think probably Billy was sandbagging a little, I found the handicapping tips, although not, I certainly won't say that they're not helpful. I think they were oversimplified and somewhat inaccurate versus like a math geek like King Yao or Stanford Wong. I think you're much better off in terms of Billy Walters is like how to make good bets, not how to like calculate the 3 decimal points, how to find the various best bets to get the best of it. So I think you'll find it more entertaining than helpful on how to win sports betting. Frankly, I thought Koenig did a better job in the Sharp Money explaining how Billy Walters makes money betting.
However, there is a perception. It's almost like the Phil Ivey perception, where even poker's players would agree that Ivey myriad games, probably the best to do it. There always has been this exception that Billy Walters is the best sports bettor. Can you tell me, outside of like the algorithms and the system, Steve, what makes Billy Walters such a great sports bettor?
Yeah, because so many other people are working alone, and he's got like the greatest team assembled ever, where he had the computer group before anyone else was using computers. So he literally built a dream team underneath him, and it wasn't obvious to everyone else that was the way to go, but it was to Billy Walters. And let's face it, there's plenty of other really the guy's way smarter than Billy Walters. I'll use an example. I don't even know him, but David Sklansky is a tremendous poker theorist. All his books on poker are great, but he and Mason Malmuth would hang out together, and it'd just be those two guys, and they'd write great poker books. But they were thinking, we're here, we don't need to bother with anyone up here, and they never got input. So in their books, and what's funny, and so Sklansky will get mad at me now, throw him under the bus. He writes in his book, there's a 98% chance, he did not say 100, there's a 98% chance something I write in a book will not, anything will not be correct. And the truth is, in his book, he said teasers were even money back when he wrote this book. 6-point teasers, NFL even money. Greatest bet ever. He's total
That's
crap.
Awesome.
Total crap. Avoid them. Sucker bet. Oh, well, there's the 2%, David. I mean, it's stick to poker. But it really shows the lesson learned is that Billy, although I'm sure he's 30 IQ points below David Sklansky, but he's 500 IQ points above. How am I going to win at this? I'm already winning. Let's win more by incorporating the very best in the business. First-class people hire other first-class people. Second-class people hire third-class people.
Ooh. Write that down. We do have questions coming in. We'll save some of them for next week. Let's get one more in here, Dustin.
All right, Steve, I know parlays are frowned upon, however. How about with free plays and bonuses? Is it worth loading up a few teams and taking a shot? Have $2,500 in VIP bonus from a book.
Yes, we've addressed this before. You actually should play parlays. You should play long shots when you get free plays, and the reason being is they take your money away when you bet, win or lose. So let's say you have 8 $100 parlays. Yes, Patrick, I'm going to make the time with 30 seconds to spare. So if you bet 8 straight bets and you just shotgun it all over the field, you're going to get back. You're going to go 4-4, and you're going to get back $400. If you do really well, you're going to go 5-3 and get back $500. Or you could just play 8 3-team parlays, all paying 6-1. And you know what? If you wanted to, you could blanket all 8 combinations. Team A is playing B, Team C is playing D, C play A, C, E, etc. You play all 8 combinations. One of them will win. It pays 6-1. So think about this. Now your free plays, instead of getting you back $400 and they're worth 50 cents on the dollar, you're going to get back $600. You're going to get back 75 cents on the dollar with no risk. You can absolutely lock it in.
That is incredible.
Oh, your brain is hilarious. That is a great question written in. sharpmoney@vsin.com. Keep the questions coming. Your questions will be answered next week by professional bettor Steve Fezzik. Pregame.com, Fezzik Sports on Twitter. You're the best, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.